Good morning and good evening. Welcome to our Urgency for Dignified Menstruation with our Miss World Nepal, Shrinkhala Khatiwada. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that it's about 8 p.m. right now in Nepal. And even with all our time differences, we're coming together as not only as Miss World Nepal, but as the Dignified Menstruation Ambassador as well. So welcome and thank you so much. Mute.
Thank you so much, Mili, for organizing this and for joining in such early in the morning. 8 p.m. is not that bad, to be honest. And I feel honored to be present here, not just like you said, as a Miss Nepal, but also as a dignified menstruator, advocate, or ambassador, whatever you call it. And I'm excited to be sharing the screen with you.
Well, thank you. And, I think it's such a pleasure to see such a monumental influencer in, Nepali youth culture, and especially in the activism going on right now in Nepal, where you see a lot of powerful figures in society and in celebrities who are really taking on other goals and are really making the move to make real sustainable changes happen. And I know that you do that with all your other work as well. So again, thanks for that. And we're excited to have this conversation with you because we just want to know a little bit about your journey into dignified menstruation and what does dignified menstruation mean to you, and what work have you done in it, and what work do you plan to continue kind of going in your platform. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your intro? A little fun thing about yourself you'd like to tell us?
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch the last
I was
question.
just asking if there's anything else you wanted to personally add into your intro, something you wanted the audience for us to know. I know we have folks joining us from all over the world. Yeah, so this is being on Facebook Live, so everyone will really see it.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in live today. And dignified menstruation has been a topic of discussion for as long as I can remember. And growing up in a society that considers even speaking about menstruation to be a taboo, it's really important to have these discussions. And with my experience, I feel like I was pretty lucky growing up because my parents, my family, even my grandparents were very open towards, letting a menstruating girl or a woman give all the freedom that's available. Because at my household there was never a difference when I was menstruating or when I was not. So I never really visibly felt like menstruation was such a heavy subject in the society. For me it was pretty normal to be menstruating. I mean, I was pretty shy discussing about it with my father, but it was just an adolescent girl going through her own journey. It had nothing to do with implications that my family had brought up on me. Apart from that, my journey with menstruation has been very smooth and very comfortable. I remember as young as I guess I was just 8 or 9 years old when my mother introduced me to what menstruation was. And since she was traveling a lot, every time she'd leave the house for a night or two, she would always make sure that I knew where all the, pads were. And she would tell me, okay, these drawers have pads in them, and she had already taught me ways and hows to use it, how to dispose it, and things like that years before even I had my first period. In fact, at one point, I was so curious to just try them on that I put them on for a whole day because I felt like they would be so comfortable. All these ads, they'd show these pads to be like these, airy and light feeling objects that you'd wear, and I felt so curious about it that I even tried it once. So my journey was pretty smooth, but uh, as soon as I started learning about what my friends were going through, I saw my friends just, missing their classes because for even 12, 13 days when they had their first periods. I saw my friends missing schools because they didn't feel comfortable coming to school, especially on the days when we'd wear white uniforms because they did not want their stain to be visible to their classmates. And then as I moved forward, as I noticed about other taboos and other subjects in the society, and especially when I got introduced to the Chaupadi culture, I was shocked, and I was my bubble of reality that I was perceiving just fell apart, and I realized that menstruation was actually such a heavy subject that needed to be discussed upon. And although growing up for me it was such an easy subject, it took me some time to grasp the depth of the problem, because for me menstruation was menstruation, like it was just a natural process, and to realize that for society it was completely different was a journey on its own. So yeah, that has been my journey, and especially when I went to Assam, the far west of Nepal, and when I spent some time inside the Thau goat itself, I realized the depth and the severity of the situation that we were dealing with, and it was not to be taken lightly at all. And when I met Radha auntie, I've known her for quite some time. She is my mother's friend, so I was introduced to Radha auntie when I was very young. But when we had our first discussion about dignified menstruation, I remember having a very long conversation, middle of the night, for I think 2 or 3 hours, when she explained to me what dignified menstruation actually was. And it was such an eye opening journey for me as well, because every time we talked about menstruation, we only talked about sanitation, but the dignity of it all was always missing out of the conversation. And it has been a journey for me as well. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I wouldn't say I know about it completely, but I know enough to, uh, break the
Yeah.
perspective around menstruation in Nepal.
Right, right. No, thank you so much for that. I think you touched on a lot of important topics. And I think in that, even through your journey, you can see how, not having that actual menstrual restrictions in your house really helped develop your early understanding of menses as a biological process. And I love that your mother, kind of prepared you for everything. And when she would leave the house, she would, prepare because she knew it was coming. And that's wonderful. It's really a pivotal opportunity for her to, for her and you to share that intimate moment. Right. So that's one thing, is to share that intimacy, is to learn from your ancestor, from your, from your mother, on how to do this very biological thing that, menstruating people do, right? And so, wow, that's really beautiful and powerful, and it shows how and that's how shaped your idea of menstruation and with your friends. But I think one thing you really touched on also is that even though you didn't have the actual restrictions, when you started, maybe menstruating and talking about it with your friends, or, hearing about it, you saw how, how undignified it really is in society, and how, besides that strict, like, actual menstrual restrictions, where you touched on kind of feeling shy to talk about it, or, not feeling quite as comfortable to talk about it, or even, the not knowing of the fact that it is such a heavy issue, and that it is a really painful subject for a lot of folks, is really quite, you can see that's kind of where you develop that understanding of dignified menstruation. I'd love to know about, just now in where you are in this position, what does dignified menstruation mean to you? And, what does it signify in your life? And thank you for mentioning Radha. Obviously, to all the audience, this is Radha Baudel, our founder and, pioneer of menstrual advocacy and dignified menstruation.
Um, for me, most importantly, dignified menstruation means taking out the shame factor from menstruation, number one, because it's actually really funny to even think about it. We don't feel shameful talking about going to the loo, or peeing, or I mean, it's as natural as that, right? So for me, dignified menstruation starts with taking out the shame factor from menstruation. And secondly, for me, it's about giving back the dignity to all the menstruators that they deserve. Because with the restriction around mobility, around touch, around food, around around a vast range of issues that we think about. Dignity in menstruation means giving back the freedom that the human rights, it goes back to the human rights issues, and taking out the shame and giving back the freedom, that the human right to live their life with complete unrestricted freedom. That's what dignified menstruation means to me. And also touching upon the subject, it's also important to note that dignified menstruation does not just limit around Nepal or South Asia. It's actually an ongoing subject around the world, and a lot of time it has been overlooked with the fact that it's mostly centered around the developing world or the global south, but it's actually an ongoing issue around the world, and it's such an eye-opening experience. The more you learn, the more you know. Yeah.
All right, and I always also think about it as really on like it's like a theory that you're applying into your life, right? The theory is dignified menstruation, and the idea that it's our human right to live with that dignity, when you were born, just because you are human, rather than it being a factor of your class, caste, race, geographic location, and I love that you point out that all over the world, there is so much of that menstrual stigma and discrimination and restrictions, even if it doesn't look so visible like a towel, right? Just because we don't see that here in America, it's because, first of all, there's no land to build. Second of all, they don't know about towel. So that's why they're not building it. It's not because, it's a world where it's free of that menstrual discrimination restrictions. And you've traveled globally, and how do you any kind of experience you've had where you've been like, wow, I can't believe that I just experienced that out here, or have you ever been in a position like that?
Yeah, I remember when I was in France and I had to go buy pads for myself. And I was
Uh-huh.
shocked to see how expensive they were in a country like France. It should be free. Come on. I mean, I can understand that poor countries are struggling with the tax issues and whatever, but have it free there. So I was really shocked to see how expensive they were. Apart from that, I think most of my experiences have been in and around Nepal. So this was one particular moment that I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that is so valid, right? Like, if the idea is that money creates more, better society, and if you have the money to support your society, then you should support more than half your society,
Right.
which bleed
Right.
at some point in their life, right?
Right.
Or every month,
Right.
or maybe they've already done all their bleeding, but you should support them. And I totally agree with you. I think that's a big part of dignified menstruation, as well as the idea of that. That burden of the menstrual products. First, you have shame around the menstrual products about which
Right.
product you use. And have you ever experienced that, like pads, tampons versus cups? This
Yeah.
kind of morality around menstrual products, as well as the expense of it. Social, environmental issues. There's just so many different layers in every component of this, and
Right.
and, and you really touched on that. Um, so I guess the question would be, since in your personal life you don't practice any restrictions, and you didn't since you're growing up, what kind of place does restrictions have in your like family life, or in your like personal friends life? Like, do you, as someone who advocates for dignified menstruation, do you sort of actively involve yourself sort of in kind of taking out restrictions for other people in your life? Do you talk to them? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I try talking about it as often as I can, and especially with my friend circle, because it starts from you and from your circle, and then it multiplies around their circle. So it's like a gradual and a slow process, as much as we'd want it to be now and right now, but it's gonna take some time. And most of the times I struggle communicating these ideas with the older women, not just men, but especially older and who have been raised to think about menstruation as a dirty subject. They feel impure whenever they are menstruating, to a point that even my friends, um, who have been raised by these women who have been cultured to think that way, even my friends feel that way. And no matter how much I or anybody else tries to educate them that menstruation is as normal as any other human bodily processes that happen in your body, they still feel a kind of, I don't know, they still feel impure. They still feel like they are going to make the gods angry. They still feel like touching the fridge or going inside the kitchen is an act of disrespect towards the gods or the family members. And it's so difficult to break this mindset. It's a continuous process. It does not happen right now and not, in a short span of time. It's a continuous conversation that we need to have. And yeah, I'd like to share one particular story that actually justifies why dignified menstruation is so important. So I have my cousin, and we grew up in the same community. Although we lived in different houses, our houses were practically just two buildings away. But we grew up around the same society, the same. We grew up with same set of friends and similar backgrounds and everything. But I remember she used to be this very naughty and very outspoken kid, and she was never afraid of talking to new people or just going into someone's house and introducing herself, making new friends. And she was really this super confident kid. And I perhaps was not even as confident as she was while we were growing up. But I remember this particular moment in her life when she started menstruating, and she was locked up for 12 or 13 days, I don't remember. But after coming out of that 12, 13 days of isolation, she was a completely different person. I don't know what she learned in there, what she was taught about, but as far as I know, she was taught to be more womanly and to be more shy, or I don't know what happened, but after that, she turned into this very introverted kid, and she wasn't as outgoing as she was. And even till today, I see the effects of that particular moment in her life. And in contrary, I had all the freedom in my life, and I never thought being a woman meant having any restrictions, and or I never ever felt like a weaker sex just because I was a woman or I was menstruating. But this dialogue that happens around so many families in Nepal, that starts with छोरी मान्छे भएर तिमीले यस्तो गर्नुपर्छ, छोरी मान्छे भएर यस्तो खालको व्यवहार गर्नुपर्छ, छोरी मान्छे भएपछि अलिकति रिप्रेसिभ हुनुपर्छ, भन्न मन लागेको कुरा पनि भन्नु हुँदैन, you know, this whole dialogue that happens almost in every household that we see has shaped women to believe that they are the weaker sex. And that started with menstruation. So this story is pretty important to me because I visibly saw the difference that could make in someone's life, someone's personality, someone's way of thinking, just with menstruation. That started from menstruation, and it grew up with every other thing that built up going forward in life. So yeah, this has been an interesting experience.
Definitely. Wow. No, that was such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think you visibly, rather something that she always say is, menstruators and just, we can't use the words like menstruators and non-menstruators because, with dignified menstruation, or encompassing all menstruators, regardless of their gender statuses. But basically she has this saying, and you'll have to help me translate it, but she says, like boys are like ghetto. What is ghetto in English? Peas? Green pea?
Keto is pea, green
Pea?
pea, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So boys are like
Yes, yeah,
pea.
keto is green pea, I think.
Green pea. All right. Okay. So she says that is like, boys are like green peas and girls are like til or like black pepper. It comes green at first. It's a green stalk, and then and the kiddo is very small, the pea. So the menstruators, they're both like this in the beginning. Then as they grow up, because of the societal values and expectations and restriction and discrimination, and all the kind of privileges that we give to non-menstruators, the kiddo becomes big, like how after you put it in water, it becomes big and swells up, and it breaks out of their little shell. They're just so big and egotistical, and they have everything going for them, and the world is kind of formulated that way. And then the black marriage first, it's really like a green stalk, and then it just shrivels down into a really just like a little black dot. And that's something really powerful that really stuck with me for a long time because, like you said, you visibly saw that happen to your cousin, right? You saw how all that shame and stigma and isolation and that separation from society, family, home, and that kind of, just drilling of, you are impure, you are less than, that you've been talking about really happened. So this is just so impactful. Yeah, wow. So thank you for that. I kept thinking about that as you were saying your story. I was like, wow, here it is exemplified. And and you seeing that, how powerful it is that we need to have the conversations and make those monumental changes to change that, because that is just simply a factor of discrimination and nothing else, right? Your beautiful, vibrant
Right,
cousin now.
right, right. And I've
Yeah,
also seen houses that have like pets and they are so welcoming towards their pets. They let them sleep in their bed and everything. But menstruating women is even below that, You're not allowed to sleep in the same
right,
bed or even enter the kitchen.
right,
It's so funny how deeply ingrained all of this is that even women from our generation have accepted this as a reality. This acceptance is what bothers me the most. The way that they've taken it so lightly is what bothers me the most, because common understanding is that education is going to change it all, and then the upcoming generations might not have to go through the same experience. But given the situation that we're seeing right now, I mean, Lord knows how far this is going to stretch out, how many generations it's yet to see. Yeah.
right. Wow, no, and I'm really glad that you said that, because yes, we do always keep saying, that after the older generation are gone, then the new generation will take over. But it's the idea of thinking and the idea of practicing those thoughts, and also,
Right.
how you mentioned earlier, if menstruating people are the one that are guarding this kind of practice and are wanting it to keep going, it's because they've
Right.
internalized all those thoughts, right, and all the discrimination. Yeah.
True.
Um how is it in your kind of, I mean, I know that it's been a while since you've been in like in the pageant itself, but in there, when you were there, it was all menstruators, and so how was it? Was there like solidarity between all of you in terms of like, did you guys talk about menses? What was the kind of environment like regarding dignified menstruation there?
I remember having these conversations, and we also had participants who had been advocating about menstruation, menstrual dignity, perhaps not dignity, the term in particular, but who had been advocating about freedom around menstruation and sanitation and whatever it is. There used to be conversations, but I don't remember profoundly just speaking about it, because I don't know, perhaps we all grew up in privileged families, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember having this conversation during the pageant, but after that, all the four of the winners, we definitely had a lot of conversations around it. And Priya and Manita, both of them are advocates for menstrual dignity. Manita is representing Ds for Girls, and Priya is representing Hati Hati. So I got an opportunity to be around these really confident and empowering women, and I got to learn from them as well.
Amazing. I love that. And that's again so impactful in your own development as well.
Right.
What's something that you would say, I mean, how could, like, did the pageantry supply you guys with menstrual products, anything like that, in terms of structure?
I, I I don't think, I don't remember them supplying, but I remember this one particular incident when we were supposed to wear a bikini. It wasn't like a public competition, but it was just to build up our confidence inside closed doors so that we would not feel uncomfortable when we were representing in the international pageants. But
Right.
one of the participants was going through her menstruation cycle, and she said that she was not comfortable wearing a bikini, the bikini bottom, because she was wearing a pad. And I remember she got yelled at pretty badly. And she was said that there are other ways, you can wear tampons or whatever. And I wasn't happy with how the situation was dealt with. It could have been dealt with a much better dialogue and with much more respect, and perhaps it could have been dealt in a way to take out the shame around wearing a pad, although you are wearing a bikini or whatever. So yeah, this one particular moment I remember, but unfortunately, no, we weren't supplied with pads, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah, I was just thinking about that, just in terms of, I mean, as a institution that is, you know, having majority slash all menstruators who are in that age group where they're probably menstruating regularly every month. And so,
Right.
so it's just interesting to see ways in which it's so easy to implement dignified menstruation because you're not just giving products, right? The product is one thing. Everyone, like you said, is from privileged families. They can afford
right,
products. It's not
right,
about affordability, but more about taking care of the necessary things
right,
that we need, right?
right,
And also, like how you mentioned, maybe if there was a variety of products that they were giving out, maybe they could be like, hey, like we're giving out these green products. You probably use these for bikinis. If you haven't, we can help you. You know what I mean? Just there's ways that we can really
right,
change the
right,
structure
right,
of just like
right,
little
right,
things. Um,
right.
and
Yeah,
right. And who knows, for that participant, if they've ever worn a tampon before, and to be asked to do that on the spot is just, it can
right,
bring a lot of shame and
right.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
But the shame factor, it wasn't imposed upon the participant, but it was the shame that came from her own internalized thought process. So I don't know. Apart from that, I never remember having any kind of discomfort around menstruation. And even when we were traveling with male directors, they were pretty understanding about our situation, and they were comforting, and they would ask if we need any help, and they would understand if we're having menstrual cramps and everything. But I agree. I mean, menstrual products should be. Isn't it as common as having toilet papers in the toilet? I mean, come on, right?
right.
So yeah.
Right. And again, I think more than the actual product, I think it's the implication behind it that it's normal and that it's okay to be visible, right? Because beyond just
True,
please tell me how
true.
you feel about this, but beyond just the financial burden, it's also like hide your blood. The idea is always hide it away. Don't tell us that you're menstruating. Wrap it in a large toilet paper and then throw it away in the trash can, and then throw the trash can away.
Right,
It's always about hide it,
right,
keep it
right.
in. How do you feel that is also an impact?
Yeah, it definitely is. In my home, me and my mother were pretty close growing up, and she didn't ever feel any kind of shame throwing away her pad, or sometimes it would just open up and the blood would be visible. And the male
Right.
members in my family were very comfortable with that. I never had any issues. But I remember once I had a friend over, and she came up to me and said, "Oh my God, you're in your bathroom. The pad is so visible. Don't you have to do something about it?" I said, like, "What's the big deal about it? Come on." So,
You're like, in the bathroom, like it's in the toilets, like what do you need to be in? Right. No,
yeah,
that's very
yeah,
real. Right. No, it's always that idea that, not only is it, something that you need to take care of, it's a you problem, but also like don't tell us about it. It's that visible
right,
to us when you hear about it in just society, it's like, oh, menses, oh, like what are you talking about? Like, shh, let's keep it
right,
private.
right.
So
Yeah.
definitely add to that. As we're sort of in our ends, how do you, or I guess, what do you want to see happen in your role right now as an advocate, and also with the platform that you do have?
Mhm.
Like, how would you like to see dignified menstruation work, or in general, or for yourself, develop?
Yeah, I try to grab every opportunity that I can to talk about it, speak about it. It could be as simple as just sharing the fact that I celebrated Dashain even when I was menstruating. I put my tika on, I received my blessings, As
Right.
simple as that can actually make an impact, because I remember making that post. I wasn't even thinking much about it. It was the day of tika, and I menstruated the same day. And in my home, I've been practicing this freedom all my life. It wasn't a big deal for me, but I just felt like, it's such a big deal for so many people, and perhaps just sharing about it would ease them to, take that step forward, even just a little bit. So that it could be as simple as that, or it could be a little more, a teamwork, as going to Acham and making a documentary. So it's a widespread approach, participating in panel discussions, just speaking about it, And
Right.
I represent a brand of pads, and
Mhm.
I communicate with them about how can we address the issue around menstrual taboo, because pad and menstrual taboo are so interconnected. And although it deals with sanitation, and menstruation, we constantly have this conversation about bringing in the dignity factor. And I really appreciate how they have been trying to, bring in dignified menstruation into their advertising modality as well, with different competitions and poetry competitions. We received, I think, more than 500 or 600 poems around menstruation and
Wow.
around blood and how it was okay to speak about it. And that competition really made an impact. So it's a mix of different things and trying to utilize the platform in the best way that I can.
Right. Wow. No, excuse me. I think that, you know, because we're in this sort of like a social entrepreneurship world
Right,
now,
right,
right, like
right,
it's social, right, like social entrepreneurship with like capitalism, everything. It's like we need to be in a space where, they're talking about profits and capitalization, right? And so to be in those spaces where you're, in working with a menstrual product brand, and then to bring in dignified menstruation, and because we need to sort of cultivate this idea that if they want their pad to be chosen, then they need to focus on what we want, right? Which is that aspect of dignity, right? You need to advertise it in a way that I'm gonna want to buy it. Don't put blue blood on there because I don't bleed blue, and I've never even met you, but I know that you don't bleed blue. So put red.
right,
Tell us it's okay. Right. It's just in sort of cultivating that social environment, because media
right,
definitely, is going to influence society, and then of course that
right,
as being an
right.
influencer and being in the media spotlight. What's something that you like to just sort of tell the audience about how they can start their own journey into dignified menstruation, or continue it, or just sort of unlearn all those toxic, really toxic values and beliefs that we've been taught, and to remove that.
The most important thing, like you mentioned, is to unlearn whatever we've been cultured to think about. And to everybody who is listening to this conversation, or anybody who are going to have these conversations in the future, if you ever have felt any kind of discomfort when speaking about menstruation or menstruating or just being open about it, I think you need to reflect, why is that discomfort inside you? Where is it coming from? And it's just a matter of, unraveling your journey through life and trying to reflect upon all the experiences that you've had, like you said, how the media is shaping menstruation, how it's dealt with at schools, how it's dealt with around your friend circle, around your family, around the restrictions that you've seen, and to just try to understand it as a natural process, and in fact celebrate it, because it's a reminding, continuous journey that's reminding you that you can give birth and you can be a mother. And instead of glorifying it, if you are feeling ashamed about it, I think you need to reflect upon it. And whenever we are having these conversations, if you still feel this discomfort around it, try to read, try to do your own research. Internet has made things so easy, and it's just a matter of time. If you just try to learn, just forget about all the beliefs that you've had so far, and with an open and unbiased mindset, if you just try to listen to these conversations, to read about the materials that are out there around dignified menstruation, it's as simple as day and night. It's as clear as day and night. And it's actually, like I said, it's very funny to me that we are still dealing with this subject, and it's outrageous and funny at the same time that we are having to deal with it in this century when people are going to outer space and we are building these skyscrapers and whatnot, and we are still stuck with menstruation being a taboo. It's very outrageous to think about it. And yeah, I think we all need to reflect first of all and unlearn, and try to advocate it around your circle, around your social media accounts. We are all influencers. I mean, aren't we? Come on. We at least have 100, 200 followers, and that's influencing as well.
Of
So,
course. And touching one person, and changing their sort
yeah,
of like their personal life has been just so
yeah,
monumental. And
yeah.
I'm sure after your post about Dustlane, it's so funny. I did a similar post on Dustlane, and excuse me. And I love like having the shock factor of I'm just like, I'm menstruating and I'm doing it, and sort of even, in my family too, while we also come from a privileged family, I would say that they're a little bit more traditional. And, for me, what I would just say is, I'm menstruating, but I'm going to participate. If you don't want to put tika on me, that is your choice. I will not force you. You don't have to. That's me. It is okay, but I will participate. And if you don't want to, that is your choice by yourself. But I'm here. I'm here.
Agreed. Agreed.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
times, whenever I have these conversations, and the most recurrent conversation that I have is that they don't want any conflict in their family, or they don't want there to be any kind of bad feeling inside the family. And that's exactly what I say. You're not forcing people to put tika on you. You're not forcing people. You're not barging inside someone else's private temple or anything. It's about the public sphere that we're talking about. It's about your choice. It's their choice if they don't want to, but your choice is yours and mine is mine. If I want to put tika on, I'll participate in dasai. And if someone feels uncomfortable, I am not going to force them to, to put tika on me. You're not
Right.
trying to
But I
make.
will be here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I will participate, and it's your
Right.
choice and it's my choice. Yeah.
Right. No, totally, I agree. And I think seeing the outpour, I'm sure, on your post too, about how folks were like, wow, like if someone else can do it and they can post about it, then I can surely start thinking about doing it, or
Right.
even, start doing it myself. And I think, just seeing all that kind of, comments from especially younger women as well, or menstruators, it's really beautiful to see them being like, no, I'm gonna have a conversation, like I saw this and I read this post and now I'm gonna do this. So it's quite amazing. And what would you like to say to kind of the older generation, kind of, in the idea of like respect versus, progress / like, moving forward into not even modernity, but more just freedom and justice and human rights, so how do you feel about balancing that, kind of like that whole respect aspect versus with justice and human rights?
It's a very difficult balance to maintain, to be
Right.
honest, because you always want to be respectful. And the main thing is that I understand where their thoughts are coming from. I don't want to blame them or criminalize them for the way that they think. I understand that it's a societal process, and they are thinking this way because they were brought up around the environment that made them think that way. So for me, it's always about respecting how they feel, but still trying to explain what I feel and what are my beliefs. And it's actually a common belief that we need to establish upon the older generation. But the main thing is respect and acceptance. Respect and acceptance from my side about how they feel, and for them to respect and accept how I or our generation feel, but having a dialogue about why they feel a certain way and why we feel that each of their thoughts are actually not their own, but it has been, shaped that way because of these factors. And it's just about kind of decoding the way that their mentality is shaped and giving them examples. And I often say, whenever someone says, oh, I feel impure, I feel like the gods are going to curse us for not obeying these isolations or anything else. They feel kind of impure and guilty if they anytime break the structures around menstruation. And I tell them, listen, I have been practicing freedom all my life. My mother
Right.
has been doing that. And to be honest, I feel like we are thriving in our lives. I've never felt like the gods are cursing us, or we are having this bad kind of omen around us because we are practicing freedom around menstruation. I am an example. See that my family is an example. It's about sharing these experiences. And I feel like young women are easier to convince because they have been suffering through it, and it's a younger woman would understand easily, and perhaps they would try to change things around them. But older generation are very difficult to deal with. So for me, it's an approach of respect and communication. And I would never force anything upon anyone, but the most or the least, I'd say the least I'd expect out of them is to respect their younger generation's choices, They can keep
Right.
their choices, but don't force us to follow the same beliefs.
Right, right, right. No, and I think at some point it does have to sort of just be, is someone ready to see see the light, right? Are you ready to accept the actual truth, which is that we have been discriminated and continue to be, discriminated unless we make that change in our own life, but also
Yeah.
structurally as a society overall, right? Like, there's so much reflecting that we do, but then, we want that kind of structural support, in our schools, in our communities, in workspaces, and being able to, communicate about menstruation. But wow, thank you so
Yeah.
much. We've talked about really an expansive amount of things. I think that the one last thing I wanted to touch on, and I kind of forgot about it earlier, is, you mentioned sort of this like cultivating culture of making women feel less than, and feel like they can't say what they want to say. Yeah, it was that one little comment that you kind of mentioned, was that we tell women that they shouldn't say what they want to say,
Mm-hmm.
and that really to me connects to you know kind of this rape culture that we have, and sexual assault and
100%.
discrimination and harassment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Right.
please, talk to us a little bit about that connection.
It's difficult to understand how deeply the restrictions around menstruation have shaped women, have shaped society, have shaped this even safety around women. And it starts with menstruation. When we menstruate for the first time, and when we are restricted to not do this or that, and when it's often veiled under the impression that they are protecting us, or they are taking care of us, and they want us to rest or whatever, it's kind of creating this mindset that women are the weaker sex, and at least 4 days a month they are definitely weaker than their male counterparts. And at
Mhm.
home, this is all what I learned when I went through the Dignified Menstruation catalog and all the researches that have happened. If there's a brother and a sister growing up in the same family, and if we are restricting the daughter around menstruation and making her isolating her at least 4 days a month, it's always shaping her to feel like she's the weaker sex, or she needs care and love and support. I mean, it's okay if she personally feels like she needs to take a rest, but the rest should not be imposed upon her. Or you should
Right,
not impose anyone. Like, if you feel fine in anything, why is everybody else telling that you need to take rest or go inside your room and live peacefully for 4 days? What if I don't want to do that, right? And this
right,
veil of telling you that we are doing this for you because we care for you, this is such a this mindset is cultivating such a dark side of our society, which is very difficult to uproot, because it's veiled under love and care and
right.
whatever, right?
It
So
it sounds very,
starting at
like
home,
paternal journalist,
starting with men.
right? No, I mean,
Right,
it's
right. So starting with that,
right. No, I agree with that.
please go ahead.
No, I totally agree with you. I think, just that, the idea that, someone else knows better for you than you, and then you should not say no, right? You're cultivating this, if you cannot talk about your menstruation, your vagina, your breast, your vulva, you can't even say these words out loud without, getting this kind of a shock factor from people, then how can we say,
Right,
no, I don't want to have sex, right? How are you going to say, no, I don't
right,
want to have sex? To maybe your husband for the first night, or to your right, anybody, or no, don't touch me there, or no, don't talk to me that way. How do you say that when all your life you've been taught to not say anything at all? So
of
definitely.
course.
We had a
Yeah.
little on Facebook Live, we've had a comment. I'd like to talk about it. So we've had someone ask, so in regards to when we're talking about tika, in putting tika during menses, they said, not putting tika is like accepting discrimination if you're not putting tika on because you are menstruating. Kika, so I just tuned in and my class got over. Okay, I think she's asking about, like, if you choose to not put tika on when you're menstruating, are you accepting discrimination? Because you're saying, like, when we talk
Course,
about
yes.
boys, Yeah, she's saying because when we're talking about choices in regards to discrimination, it's not really about choices because there isn't really a choice. So she's asking, is it like accepting discrimination?
I feel like I don't know. I mean, if you are not, it's a difficult question. You know what? I feel like if someone else is saying that you can't put tika on, if you've just accepted the reality, then you are definitely accepting discrimination. At
Right.
least speak up about it and see that you
Yeah.
are participating, have that conversation. It might take 1, 2, 3 years, but it's going to change someday, definitely.
Right.
So I think if
Right.
you are silently accepting it without even trying, then you're definitely accepting discrimination. I think, yeah.
Right, right. No, and that's fair. First, I thought maybe the question was about, is it accepting discrimination if you don't put tika on by the people who don't want to put tika on you because you're menstruating? And in that question, I would say, no, because I don't need them to bless me if they're not going to actually bless me. First of all, like you don't need to just you don't need to just put the rice on my. It's okay. Those things we already have
No,
a lot.
yeah. Yeah, it's just respecting their choices. It's
Mhm.
respecting their choice. It's not accepting discrimination. If you know that, that's not right. If you know that, and if you, yeah, that's not no, yeah.
Right. But I do agree with you in the first part in that, silence in the face of oppression is you siding with the oppressor in some way, right? Even though you are a victim yourself, you are also accepting it because, in the end, you want to do something and you are not able to do it because of discrimination and,
True,
the idea that continues. So, yeah.
true.
We're almost at our hour's mark, and it's been so great talking to you. Really, time has just gone by. In our last sort of wrapping up, what are some ways that you feel like we can, intensify and kind of grow the dignified menstruation movement? Like, what do you feel like is missing? Because obviously, right now different organizations in Nepal as well that work towards menstruation advocacy, even globally. But in terms of dignified menstruation, how do you feel like we can intensify that?
I think we are not talking enough. We are
Okay.
not talking about it enough. As much as I feel like there are organizations and people working for it, it's still not enough if we want to see visible difference in a short amount of time. And
Right.
it should be a subject at schools, at every household, make sure that you're having these conversations and make sure that you're starting with your family. You don't have to wait for influencers or organizations to start these conversations, because the most difficult part is breaking the taboo from your home, inside your home. It's easier for me to advocate about it in public, but whenever it comes to dealing about it with people that I know personally, like my grandmother maybe, or my aunt, or my sisters or whatever, it's even more difficult to break that when you personally know someone. So we are not talking about it enough. Let's talk more about it. I think that's the best that we can do. I appreciate all that's been happening, and I really appreciate people like you, Mili. I adore your personality and the way you've been dealing with the subject head on, straight. Like I really respect that, Radha Di, and everybody who's been advocating for dignified menstruation. I respect you, but it's our duty to amplify it.
Right, I agree. And it has to be something that everyone, like we say, dignified menstruation is everybody's business and you should all know about it and you should all be put your foot in it. So yeah, well, we'll have more conversations and we'll continue doing this. And I know that you're also going to school soon, I hear. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I know you'll be coming over to this side of the world. So hopefully, maybe one day we can meet face to face and do another talk show. But welcome. I hear your congratulations. You're coming to Harvard, and what will you be studying there?
I was studying masters in urban planning, and congratulations to you as well. You're starting your medical school, right?
I am. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be in two separate sides of USA, but hopefully we'll get to meet. And, in Harvard, I'm sure you'll get to amplify the crime administration as well. I know they have a lot of strong programs there and student clubs as well. So we'll have to collaborate. But it's been quite amazing. Thank you so much. Any last words to your audience? And please, for all the audience, follow Dignified Menstruation as well as Shrinkhala, as I'm sure all of you already do.
Thank you, Mili, and congratulations to you. And thank you for this platform once again. I really hope to meet you. I feel like that's going to happen very soon.
Yes, I will.
And to all the viewers, thank you for listening to an hour-long conversation around dignified menstruation. And I appreciate you taking your time out to listen to this conversation. We are yet to learn, and I feel like I'm still growing and learning as the days go by. And there's still so much to unlearn and to learn, and just to realize that you don't know it all, and perhaps there are things that you know about are perhaps wrong, and to accept the fact that whatever you know is wrong is a very big challenge that we have to go through. And to all the viewers out here, thank you for giving us an opportunity to share our experiences and everything. And I hope you take part in amplifying the dignified menstruation movement. I hope you all stay safe.
Thank you so much. Exactly. It is a challenge, and we are asking you to take that challenge with us. So thank you.
Yes.
All right, take care. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Emily. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.